What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Tribe 9. Now, we're going to be getting into a Hinagiku breakdown. I felt like this was the perfect time to stop in my grind, talk about some of the things that I'm doing, as well as, of course, some of the things that I'm working towards. Of course, getting into team comps, tension cards, and even how to build this unit. I feel like there's so much jam-packed into this character. How to play her, she's just really fun, right? So we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. With Hinagiku, starting off with some of the basic things with her. Looking at the basic info, the attack ability, break ability, support ability, and operating difficulty. Her attack ability is very, very high. Very, 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 very high. And I mean, from everything that she does, from her primary to her secondary to her strategy skill, it's going to offer you a ton of damage. And this is unlike a lot of the other characters where she's actually bringing a lot more value from not ulting, but actually just fighting, right? Like just using her regular abilities, she can do a ton of damage. Of course, her break ability, I would argue it really should be a 4, but hey, I digress. You know, hey, that's not really her role, but it's okay. But she still offers a ton of break value, which makes her an absolutely amazing breaker, or at least a contributor to breaker, depending on if you're manualing or controlling her, or AIing her. And then of course you have the support ability, which the main thing really is going to be the defense down that she brings to the table and the aggroing, so she is able to proc attention. So that's something that I guess you can kind of consider there. And then the operating difficulty, I will say, is fairly easy, really not that hard to understand. Only thing that can kind of make her complex is the charging. But if you understand that, you basically understand how to use the character, right? All right, so getting into the character skills. What exactly is she bringing to the table? I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible to make this easy to understand, so we're not just talking about a whole bunch of like data and all this stuff, right? But in the primary attack, the main thing that you really need to understand is that you're basically going to be able to perform up to 3 stages of melee attack. This is based off of the charge attack that she's able to do. And see, that I guess could be kind of confusing for some people. They're like, well, 3 stages, how exactly do you get those 3 stages? It's based off of the press and hold that you do. And depending on the duration or how long you hold that press and hold, will actually charge up the ability more. And so you have like just the standard press that you do, which will just be a regular punch. And then from the charge that you do, it will actually increase how many hit markers you're basically able to get. Now, this will consume stamina to charge, and when being attacked in a state, you're also able to perform a deflect, which is her form of parrying in this game. And of course, with that, that's going to be something that's really nice, because even if you are charging and an incoming hit happens, it's still going to be kind of like an auto layering of like defense, really, for her, which is actually quite insane when you think about it, because you can find yourself in weird windows where you're not too sure if you should hit the parry button or not, and that can actually be a saving grace for you. And then when executing a primary attack right after a successful deflect while charging, it will become fully charged. So one of the main things that you want to do is you don't actually need to charge. You actually just need to deflect and then hit the primary attack button, and then you'll be able to get the full charge effect from it, right? Which is really, really cool. Now, the other thing that you'll have here is your secondary attack. So you're able to track and approach the target from performing a forceful knocking attack. And basically with that, when executing, you gain a certain amount of fist ki upon performing that attack. Now, fist ki is a maximum, or has a maximum of 300 stacks. And when using Akiba Kenjutsu, Lovely Impact, I guess it's when it's executed, all the stacks will be removed. And so basically you cannot use this 300 stacks until it is fully charged. Think of it as something very similar to those that have seen like my Miyu video. Like, you have to kind of build up the resonance. And once you build up the resonance, then you're able to get the full hit count out of the ult. The main difference is here is that you're not actually able to use Akiba Kenjutsu until it is fully charged, right? And I'll show you guys that. Now, of course, with that, you also have the counter attack, so you can perform a deflect counter attack. And when executing your counter attack successfully, limit enemy actions by using attacks that will make the enemy lose their balance more easily, and you're unable to defend against non-physical attacks. Now, looking at the status details, the simplest thing is obviously just to kind of like say it is just really the longer that you hold the charge, the more damage that you'll essentially get, the more break damage that you'll essentially get. And of course, your break value goes up per stage, and of course, per charge, right? Now, of course, per the charge in the stage, that's going to also be consuming a certain amount of stamina, but it doesn't really consume nearly as much as you would think. I would definitely say that using your I think it's your strategy skill, actually takes up more of your stamina than not, or actually, sorry, it's your secondary. Using your secondary actually takes up more of your stamina than not your strategy skill. But with that, it is going to be giving you some really good break value because it is 150% times 3. And so you got to think about the fact that your break value is going to be times 3 at that point on this hit. And then, of course, what it does in terms of using your secondary attack is it actually will fill your fist key by 60 stacks. Remember, you need 300, right? So you get a ton of value from that. But depending on your charges, that also will then accumulate and then give you, a certain amount of stacks. The other thing is too, is that you then have the counter attack, which is just your standard counter attack with the break value of 500 and 250 on the stamina consumption. So very, very simple. Now going into the strategy skill, which is going to be your Akiba Kenjutsu Lovely Impact. And it can be executed when at 300 stacks of fist key, track and approach the target and swing both arms to perform an attack, make the enemy lose their balance more easily. It's a great breaking ability. Even when we go into the stats details, you can see the action damage is 3,000 and then the break value is 1,200 with a 480 stamina consumption. And then the fist key consumption is going to be 300 stacks. So this ability on its own, again, when you are like kind of thinking about in like the practical usage of it, it's kind of like that thing you use at the right moment. There are a lot of different ways that you can use it. You can use it to, do some scale damage. You can use it to just like do that like push on the final portion of break value that you need to be able to break the opponent that you're working against. It just really all depends on that given scenario. But I will say that it can pack a punch and actually do quite a bit of damage, considering that it's ability that you're basically building up, right? Now, of course, with that, you also have your ultimate. So it says Hinagiku is here. Deliver a charming pose and grant all enemies attention while decreasing defense point. So simply put, all you're really doing with this ability is you're basically aggroing all the characters towards you for 30 seconds. And then the defense decrease is going to be 30% for 30 seconds. Okay. So ulting with her is actually quite good because, again, one of the things that I think is really important to understand with Hinagiku is that she's not like an ulting damager, right? Like that's not what she does comparatively to like an Inoki or a Miyu. Her thing is that she just needs to be able to decrease the defense and then you can use whoever else that you want. And one of the important things with her is that she only requires a tension phase 1, which allows you to be able to perfectly pair her up with characters like the Miyus or the Inokis or the MCs or, anyone that really at that point that you want. She works really, really well. So yeah, I feel like they did a really, really good job with making sure that she's impactful, but they made her cost not so much, right? And then of course we have the chain skill. So it can be triggered when inflicting a break on the enemy, perform a follow-up attack towards the target. And then the action damage from this is just 1,200%. On top of that, you're also going to have the tension gauge recharge of 50. And so very, very simple. Okay. Now, real quick, before we actually get into the build, I want to actually go into combat so you guys can see the like overall layering of how she works. And then we'll come back and get into like her Patimon and things of that nature. All right, guys. So here we are in combat. We're just going to jump right into it. Now, right now, we're just using the primaries. That's the deflect right there. Now, with the primaries, you have the hold. And I usually count it by like a second, right? So 1 second gives you your first hold. 2 seconds should be relatively giving you both the full charge. 1, 2, and then boom, right? You see that like little difference right there? So it's way different in impact. You get way more hits. Let's go for the parries there. All right. Now we're gonna also be building up that pink bar to the left of us. So the pink bar, we're basically just trying to build that up. And the cool thing is that no matter whether or not you hit anything, it still builds that bar up, right? So right now, just to show you my stats as well, currently we're sitting at 72% crit rate. That extra 1% I'm getting is like anytime I use my secondary attack, but from my primary attack damage multiplier to my secondary attack damage multiplier, see we're sitting at 370% on the primary attack damage multiplier. That's what we really are like looking to really scale. That's giving us a ton of our damage. Probably one of the most basic ways of building her is focusing that. And I'm gonna talk about some of the stat values as well, because obviously we have 201% crit damage. So yeah, it's quite a bit going on here, but we'll get into that when we get into the build. But now I'll be able to use her Kenjutsu. But first, we're going to ult. Boom. All right, let's see if we can get this. Look at that, 34K casually, And that's not even try-harding, right? Like, that's not even tryharding. This chick can do a ton of damage. So now, look at that, 22Ks right there. She dealt like 60K in like 10 seconds. Less than that, 5 seconds. So that's actually pretty good, considering that we're not at even 100% crit. The closer and the more crit that we get, the better. Because then we'll really be able to see the damage numbers scale quite a bit. All right, let's go for that. Boom, boom, boom. And then we'll just do that so you can see her animation a little bit more. All right, and then we should be able to get the clean finish here. Boom, look at that, GG. All right, so let's actually work down this guy here. We'll go for another ult here, just for that decrease. And then, boom, look at that. It's so free. It just makes no sense. So, of course, this does work extremely well, and similarly on bosses as well. Obviously, we have the new boss. I would argue she's one of the better characters for it. So, let's see. So, I was trying to see if I could actually get the auto deflect to happen, but it didn't give it to me. So, that's all right. But that gives me a better opportunity to show off my healing restoration here. So as you can see, we're gaining some of that health back, and we don't have a healer on this team, mind you, right? This is just all purely from the damage we're dealing. So yeah, it works pretty well here. All right, let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Go for that. And you can just kind of see, like, where her charge attack, she's very straightforward. Nothing too complex. And it covers so much gap. Like, that's the thing. Like, she can cover a gap really, really quick. Look at that break. All right, boom, boom, boom. All right, I'm gonna go for this. All right, and then boom, boom, boom. That should be GG. Okay. So yeah, that's essentially Hinagiku in a nutshell. You know, obviously damage is just through the roof when you really get her going. And this is even like one of the best synergies that you could really use. This is even my main synergy I typically use. And that's just because I wanted to highlight her a lot more in this showcase versus what I would normally use, which just like kind of delete stuff in like a minute. So like, granted though, she can get very, very close, if not up to that point. Again, it is going to require a little bit more investment in her build. All right, so let's actually jump into that. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at what we are currently using for her build. Right now, when we're looking at my, let's go over to start here with my character rank. Currently have her at rank 4. The main thing that I'm really emphasizing, and just to kind of talk about the two different things you could emphasize, from the first passive, you have the increased action damage of a fully charged primary attack. This, in my opinion, is going to be one of the better ones for the most part. If you're playing her with that charge attack, I really like playing her with that and getting off those charge hits, being able to increase that damage. You were seeing with those hits, I was hitting 22Ks, 25Ks on her hits, on her primary. Of course, that does take some time to scale, but it's not really that long. And it works really, really well. Now, of course, with that, you also have the passive skill expansion too. So after executing Akiba Kenjutsu, Momokiyu, you basically, for a certain period of time, when executing a fully charged primary attack, perform an additional surrounding AoE attack with one cell as the center. So this is something that you can take advantage of. It does work as well. And I definitely would say this is something that is just a extra way of like you getting some excess damage, like more surrounding you. In comparison to the scaling of the multiplier for the primary attack, I just feel like I've gotten more damage from the first passive than I have the second. I think that they both are like able to work, but I will say I just feel like the first passive just kind of super scales her a lot more, considering that you really are playing a lot more into the primary attack anyway. And even with this, it's still focusing on the primary attack, but it's just making sure that you're having some surrounding damage from the AoE. So that's just kind of a preference thing, I really feel like. But I think also in terms of the matter of the fact, I still feel like the first skill passive is still better, right? Now, looking at the Pattymon, yes, we are on a broken set. It's just going to be the name of the game, guys. This game hates giving you full sets, but the stats ain't lying, okay? So we actually got some really, really good pieces. Not as good as some other people. I will say I've been like kind of mixing and matching, and I kind of have liked how my pieces have kind of turned out, which has been really, really nice. But I would definitely say some of the main things that you really are focusing is crit damage multiplier being the number one thing, in my opinion. And not even number one. I think it's 1 and 2. It just kind kind of depends really, but I would say the number one stat is going to be sword, of sword and spear, and specifically of sword and spear plus. Of sword and spear plus is going to be one of the new stat values that exists within the game, and when executing a deflect counterattack successfully, you increase your primary attack damage multiplier, secondary attack damage multiplier, and your strategy skill damage multiplier by 60% for 30 seconds, and this does stack. Okay, now is there much difference between of sword and spear plus and the regular? It's a 10% difference, but when you actually have that, at 60% on all the rolls, then that's basically giving you a pretty big gap. You're talking about a 30% difference when you actually add that value up. So yes, you will notice there not being a 30%, and right now I'm short 20%. So hey, it is what it is though. Same thing with the crit damage multiplier. The crit damage multiplier is at 45%, but you obviously have crit damage multiplier plus, and so that's definitely going to make a huge difference. But keep in mind, guys, that you can do what's necessary with crit damage multiplier 4. You really don't have to go crazy, but if you want to, the going the extra mile is definitely just one of those more min-maxy things versus like you have all your units properly built. I would definitely say go for building your units first versus trying to min-max them and you don't even have a solid build on them. So I would say, like, of course, the alternative, just kind of working your way up. Some of the things that I actually did until I was able to build her sword of sword and spear drops like pretty heavily in chapter 3. So that's going to be one of the main stats that you're really focused on. And then crit rate, right? Crit rate is definitely going to be nice until you're able to kind of build the character up in conjunction to the cards that you're using. Because I also will argue that not everybody's going to have good enough cards right off rip to give themselves enough crit so that they can just build into crit damage. So, you just have to kind of consider that too. Now, some other stat outliers that I've really been liking quite a bit, and you might have noticed it when I got hit, life absorption plus. I feel like this stat is nasty. And it does actually kind of, and there's two different stats that you can actually go for. And you can either go for life absorption or you can go for regenerate. I feel like regenerate's really good because that does also alleviate the need of a healer. And what it actually allows you to do is to be able to just kind of just be in combat gaining HP as long as you're not getting hit. Whereas life absorption makes it to where if I'm dealing damage, I'm basically able to restore HP. And so I guess it really depends on the scenario, which one becomes better. I feel like if you're really on like the brink of death and you're just trying to sit and dodge, then yeah, you kind of want to go for the regenerate. But I feel like if you're hammering down, you might get a hit, here and there, some random attack comes and hits you. You just being able to restore your own HP, it gives you a little bit more control there, I guess. So it just really all kind of depends on what you want to go for. I actually did roll some damage cut, which damage cut's not bad. It does decrease the amount of damage that you take. And considering that Hinagiku is technically like a DPS tank, that's kind of the role she's seeming to play here. Damage cut's really not bad on her because, again, she's going to be aggroing and face tanking a lot of things, deflecting as much as possible, but there are going to be some windows where you might get hit. So not a bad stat that I've rolled, but again, really, really cool that it just works so well on her. So either way, the moving speed is like that one stat I just can't get off just yet, but I am still farming. So we got one more gold stat to get on here. But other than that, we're actually looking at the pieces themselves. This is the crit damage multiplier 4 of sword and spear plus with a moving speed 1. I had a couple others. One was defense, one was attack. I just went with the moving speed. I don't think it really matters. They're all gray stats, so you're not going to keep those anyway. But we were able to get some triple gold rolls. So yes, some of you guys might not realize that that's the thing, but I'm going to have a video actually talking about gold rolls in the future, because gold rolls and being able to get those triple gold rolls, there are some things you do want to be aware of when trying to do that. But yeah, of sword and spear, crit damage multiplier 4, life absorption plus, and then of course we have the damage cut, crit damage multiplier 4 of sword and spear, right? Again, if I was to have a set effect that I was trying to go for, I would definitely say one of the ones I would probably be trying to go for actually would be probably the Berserker would be one. So it increases your strategy skill, your strategy skill damage multiplier by 25%. I would say another one would actually be coming from not Gladiator. It's another one I was thinking of, and now I can't seem to find it now. Hold on. I think it's this one. Nope, it's not that one. No, so I think it's really just Gladiator. Yeah, I really think it's just Gladiator at that point. I guess you could go with the Attacker too, which increases your attack by 15%. So those would be some of the ones that I would kind of gravitate towards. I guess depending on if you're playing her a little bit more tanky, you can go for things like increasing maximum HP, increasing like shield res. Now, this is a little bit of a weird stat to go for just because that is something that you can technically do if you're rolling the new substat for giving yourself shield. There is a stat that can give you shield. So yes, that could be something that you can kind of play around with there. But I would really just say it would probably be just like the Berserker, I think it was, right? So yeah, the Attacker, and then of course, what was it? The Berserker. Yep. So those would be the ones that I would like kind of aim for personally. But it really just depends on how you want to play the character. Now from there, I think that kind of covers, gear, the ranking. Now, dupes. Okay. I know somebody's going to ask about dupes. I would say wholeheartedly, you don't need to actually go for any extra or more dupes. I feel like the dupes are like nice if you have them, but not required. The first dupe, and I know somebody's going to ask that, should I go for the first dupe? No, because all this really does is it makes it easier for you to build up your Fist of Ki, which I feel like you kind of can build it up pretty quick anyway. So it increases the amount of Fist Ki gained from primary/secondary attacks by 15 stacks, and upon successfully deflecting when charging primary attack, increase the stack of Fist Ki by 25. So that's kind of what this is for. It's not really anything else that you're getting. So, I mean, like, to be fair, she does it kind of already pretty okay. So this just makes it even more ooga booga, which I guess if you got it, then hey, more power to you, but it is not necessary. Of course, going into the third one, the primary attack executed right after the successful counterattack will be fully charged. Now, again, the condition for this is that you need to have the Kenjutsu ready and accessible for you to be able to make this a thing. And then, of course, you also have the secondary attack is executed right after a fully charged primary attack is executed. The secondary attack will be enhanced. That, of course, is something that will like probably be really insane. But again, it's just one of those things. Are you going to go all the way to fully dupe her for that? I don't think so. No. So, just to kind of answer those questions, I don't think dupes are that necessary, if at all, for this character. I really feel like she's great even without them. Now, we're going to shift over into some team comps and as well as tension cards. Now, I would say some really good pairings with Hinagiku for at least what's currently in the game at this moment. I would definitely say it would be like Hinagiku and like units like Q, for example. So Q is actually a really, really good unit to pair up with her. They work really, really well together. I know some people are going to ask about Inoki. Inoki actually is a character that does need to have more enemy attention on her so that she can build up her heat stack. And that's kind of one of the things that I feel like makes them actually conflict and kind of sort of clash. So it just kind of depends on how you're playing these characters. I would say that Inoki technically would need to be the controlled character if you're going to run her with Hinagiku, but it could still work. But just keep in mind, like if you're maining Hinagiku, Inoki actually will be probably losing some of her potency because of the fact that you have Hinagiku primarily taking on everything, right? I would definitely say that Hinagiku works really well with Miyu. I've personally have been able to test this out a lot. And it just, again, Miyu just has such great AI anyway. So if I'm finding where, I'm just having to sit there deflect all day, I'm not really able to get off as much damage as I would like, I could just pop Miyu's ult. It's all one phase no matter how you look at it. So I can actually go from, say Hinagiku's ult to Miyu's ult, and that's just like straight shred because she's doing the defense point reduction of 30%. So she works really, really well with any heavy hitter, hard hitter, I would argue. Really wouldn't pair her up with any of like the tanks. She obviously can work really well with MC. So she's going to work really, 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 really well with MC. And so, yeah, those are just some of the ones that I would say were like some of the ones that I was able to like really test and really get a lot of like, good hardcore data from. And of course, we're using Kazuki in my comp. Not even really so much because Kazuki is good, which I think he is, but the main thing is because of his tension card. So that's the main reason why I'm using him. And of course, using Jiu, I was actually using him for his defense shred. So just to kind of see how much more scaling I could get. And they work pretty well together because they are super, super up close. She's aggroing things, which kind of takes that heat away from Jiu, and that allows him to just kind of hammer and build up his stacks as well. So it really works works out really nicely. Now, when we're looking at like our tension cards, I would definitely say some of the big or the more important tension cards that you're going to need are definitely going to be things like Full Party and Strike Zone. I feel like these are just some like mainstay ones, especially if you're going for more of those crit rate, or crit damage builds on your actual Patimon, then you need to supplement the crit rate somewhere else. So Full Party is going to be offering that crit rate and defense point, which I feel like both stat values are important to a character like Hinagiku. If she does get hit, she can take advantage of the defense point. If she's hitting, she's taking advantage of the crit rate. And then, of course, with the 2x effectiveness of the Unity card for the Strike Zone, that's going to be making that pairing just that much better for you. So it is really extremely good. Now, of course, to talk about the tension card that she currently has up on banner, is it worth pulling? Okay. I would say wholeheartedly, if you're going to build her, this is something that can absolutely help skyrocket her damage, but I don't think it's necessarily required. I feel like it is extremely good, okay, if you're only focusing her, but I won't say it's required. And here's why. Because unlike Kazuki's card, whereas Kazuki's card actually affects your entire party, okay, this is something that I think is a little bit different versus her card, where it is only uniquely affecting her, which I feel like falls a little bit more into a spender's bracket, just because if you aren't looking at using her on that team comp, then the card doesn't necessarily apply to anyone else. And it's literally when an operating character executes deflect counterattack successfully, grants oneself a perfectionism, and a perfectionism, which is increasing the primary attack damage multiplier by 40% for each stat, doesn't apply to most of the other units. Like if you're using, say, for example, you're using the hard hitters like Inoki, or you're using, Miyu. Those are ult damagers. They don't really care about primary attack damage multiplier. You're really just trying to scale your ultimate damage multiplier as much as you can so that you can nuke whatever it is and get it out of your face. So that was like one of the things that I had to kind of think about in comparison to like things to hold on to, where things to hold on to is actually something that grants you utility to your entire party. And so I feel like they're really, really good. Granted, again, really, really good card, but I don't think that it's something that you have to go for unless you really like Hinagiku. Then you can further invest into her to make her scale a lot more as an individual character. But just kind of food for thought, whether or not you're free to play or pay to win, just really kind of all based off of your wants and needs at that point. Now, of course, again, we are using the things to hold on to. This is a card that was a gacha rate up card. I think it is actually in the shop as well. So let's actually go back to the shop real quick because we'll get a little bit more into some of the tension cards. So let's actually talk to Salt. And I think his tension card went into the shop. Yeah, they both did. So you technically can come in here and buy them free to play, which again is kind of a big deal. Just saying, like, you can get these cards eventually, but you are going to have to be obviously active and basically be working up towards these, right? So that's that. But things to hold on to definitely would be something I would say to keep on your radar. It's just literally when you have a unit like Kazuki that grants shield, or any character when granting shield, it will give you that crit rate increase, which I feel like it's just extremely invaluable for my specific builds because I am building into so much crit damage multiplier. And the other thing is too, is it affects the entire party, which is why I feel like this card is so good. Now, of course, for those other slots, okay, some of the ones that I would say like seem to work really, really well. You obviously have things like, for example, the punishing attack. This is going to be when the operating character executes a deflect and counterattack, successfully increases attack point by X amount for 10 seconds. This is a great alternative, in my opinion, in comparison to, like, say, using the Gem of Flames. Gem of Flames is nice, but the Gem of Flames actually requires a little bit of a stipulating thing that you're probably not going to really be able to be too, like, able to control, and it's basically when a party member other than the operating character takes damage, increases the operating character's attack point by X amount. Not really going to be giving you much value if you're using Hinagiku and ulting with her, because she's going to always be taking most of the damage if you even get hit in the first place, right? So that's just kind of one of those things versus like when you use something like this on a build on a team comp with like a Roku. Roku's aggroing, but he's also standing there willingly taking the damage. Like, he knows he's getting hit and it's a part of his gimmick, right? So that's kind of like that, right? Of course, with some of the other cards, these kind of fall into like, for this is like the back attack, and then of course with the strategic thinking, when operating character is within a certain range from a companion, which the companion follows the character and acts upon orders, it increases attack point by that. That's a little bit more stipulated, obviously, to Saizo. But if we're looking at some of the lower rarity cards that came into the game, we got to scroll all the way down here. You have Tiger, Fire, and Cyber. I would definitely say with Fire, when operating character is of the attack role. In the attack role, in a character that can activate one of the following through compatible monster set effects: Attacker, Berserker, Gladiator. It executes deflect counterattack successfully, will increase the secondary attack damage multiplier by X amount for 10 seconds. You have Tiger, which will increase the primary damage multiplier, which again is really, really good for a character like Hinagiku. And then of course you have Cyber, which executes the perfect evasion successfully, increases strategy skill damage multiplied by X amount. I feel like this is the worst for her specifically out of the three. I would definitely say Tiger, then Fire, then going Cyber. But those are also at your disposal. I am personally using the surprise attack because I like the little extra crit rate that I'm getting from this. And it also is really good for the hegemony as well. So that's something that it kind of plays, a part in basically changing your attention, and the effect will be replaced by the hegemony as well. So that's something that I was just kind of like looking at as far as just making that an active thing that I'm just taking advantage of. And just as far as the difference, as far as what's happening, this effect cannot be overwritten and it will have higher priority over attention. And basically when the enemy is under hegemony, it attacks the targeted character and damage is reduced by 5%. So that's the big thing, right? If you go to attention would just make it to where they prioritize the person they're attacking, whereas hegemony will make it to where they are now also the person that's being attacked will take 5% less damage. So yeah, that's one of the big reasons as to why you want anything that's going to be giving you the conversion there, because it's just going to allow you to be able to reduce some of that damage, right? So again, some cards I would say are bugged. I will say I haven't been able to test every single card falling under that effect just yet, but there are some really solid ones. And those were some of the ones that I was able to kind of test or, see if they were able to work somewhat. But just kind of, putting that out there as food for thought, essentially. So with all of that being said, guys, that's basically going to be that on Hinagiku Akiba. I feel like, again, this is an extremely fun character to play. I've had a blast building her up. We're almost at level 60 with her. I've already seen some of you guys already at level 60. Dude, it is insane the value that Chapter 3 has brought to the game. There's definitely some things that they can work on, as always, but there is a lot of great that came with this update. I feel like they are doing such a good job, even with this character's implementation. I'm really excited to see what they decide to do with some of the other characters. And keep in mind, guys, I know some of you guys were saying like, I don't really know how to feel about like some of the guest usage. Keep in mind, these characters can tremendously change. Remember, Kazuki as a guest was not the same Kazuki that we got when he got rolled in on a banner. So I definitely think it's going to be worth giving feedback. If you didn't really like how that character felt in guest, let them know, because that's something that they've already mentioned, that the character is not even going to be exactly the same. We actually kind of get to use a watered down version of the character in comparison to what they're going to be when they actually get released in the game. So of course, when it comes down to all the other units coming, just make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, because we'll be doing overviews and just talking about the immediate value for those characters as well. But that's going to be that with this one, guys. I hope that this video is able to help give you a little bit more insight on how you can actually build and operate this character. So that's going to be that, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.